Hello, my friends. Tonight, we journey deep into the bitter heart of the Mongolian steppe, where the wind cuts like a blade, the sky stretches endlessly above you, and soldiers sleep with their saddles cradled against their skulls like a grim kind of comfort. There's no silk bedding here, no soft lullabies, just raw hide, cracked leather, and the persistent whisper of frost between your ribs. You're lying beneath stars so sharp they look like they could pierce your eyelids. A horse exhales beside you, its breath fogging in the cold. You clutch your saddle under your head, not for luxury, but for survival. Out here, comfort is considered betrayal. And dreams? Dreams are dangerous things. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge beside your horse. Your boots are worn thin. The landscape is a sweep of gray and gold, with brittle grass bowing under the early frost. There are no trees, no shelter, just open space and the sound of hooves. Mongol country. In the distance, a low circle of men begins to settle in for the night. There are no tents, just bodies curling against saddles, forming a living barricade against wind and ambush. You follow, unstrapping your own saddle with hands that barely feel the cold anymore. It smells like sweat and oil, its leather pocked with years of service. This saddle is not a luxury. It is your bed, your barricade, and your identity. Historically, Mongol warriors were expected to carry everything they needed: food, weapons, even bedding. The saddle, thick with layers of felt and hide, became more than just a riding tool. It molded to the body. Some soldiers even believed that sleeping without it left them open to bad luck, or worse, to cowardice. You drop to the ground. The saddle digs into your shoulder blade, but you don't shift. That pressure? That's home now. The idea of a feather pillow would make your comrades laugh, maybe even accuse you of softness. Comfort leads to weakness. Weakness leads to distraction. And distraction? Well, out here, it's deadly. Around you, sleep comes in patches. No one fully lets go. There's always one eye on the darkness, one ear tuned to the wind. This isn't just paranoia, it's protocol. Mongol military life was built on relentless vigilance. Even during rest, formations were tight, weapons kept within arm's reach. A sleeping soldier still had duties. And then there's the cold. Oh, the cold. You've never known anything like it. The air seems to slide beneath your skin, nestling in your bones like a quiet threat. But warmth isn't the goal. Endurance is. They say Genghis Khan himself once slept standing, with his back against a horse, saddle looped through his arms, more statue than man. Whether that's true or just steppe myth, no one dares question it. Historians still argue whether this brutal approach to rest was cultural, tactical, or symbolic. But what's clear is this: the saddle was a soldier's anchor. It reminded them of who they were, where they belonged, and what it cost to survive another day. You shift slightly. Your hip is going numb. Someone nearby stirs, mutters something about dreams crawling in. It's a strange superstition out here that deep sleep attracts spirits, bad luck, or worse. So most soldiers keep their slumber light, broken by short watches and muted patrols. The steppe doesn't like sleepers. It prefers warriors on edge. You stare up at the stars. They seem hung deliberately, like signals for another kind of army. The night is so quiet now that even your breath feels like too much. You let it go, slowly, watching the mist curl toward the dark. Somewhere, a wolf howls. No one stirs. Your saddle creaks as you shift your weight again. You want to sleep, badly, but you're afraid of letting go. It's not just the fear of attack or cold or nightmares. It's the deeper fear, the one no one speaks of, that if you let yourself rest, really rest, you might not want to get up again. You might forget the edge you fought to keep. A quirky tidbit: some Mongol units developed a routine where soldiers would nap in 10-minute intervals during long marches. They'd ride with heads slumped forward, reins tied loosely to their wrists, trusting their horses to follow the herd. It was the original power nap, on horseback, at a trot. You try to imagine it, drifting off mid-gallop, the wind snapping against your face like a slap, the ground a blur below. It sounds absurd, and yet it worked. Because even sleep in Mongol warfare wasn't a break. It was a tactic, a sharpened blade sheathed in exhaustion. You pull your coat tighter, feeling the wind sneak down your collar. The saddle digs deeper into your spine. Still, you don't complain. No one does. Complaints are for people who want comfort, and comfort, as you've learned tonight, is a slow kind of death. You close your eyes. Only for a moment. Only as long as the wind lets you. You wake with a start, or maybe you never fully slept, just drifted at the edge of it, tethered to your saddle like a kite that never truly leaves the ground. The sky above is beginning to pale, the first hint of dawn soaking the clouds in gray and faint rose. All around you, others begin to stir too, not with yawns or stretches, but with the rustle of armor, the check of gear, the silent glance that passes between men who've spent too many nights in too many fields. You sit up slowly, bones stiff from the cold, and brush the frost from your sleeve. Your saddle, now damp with dew, creaks as you hoist it back onto your horse. No one speaks. Voices are like campfires, warm but risky. And in Mongol culture, silence was often a form of respect, even strength. The less said, the more endured. You notice one of the younger soldiers, a boy really, no more than 15, grimacing as he massages his neck. He must have slept wrong, or perhaps too deeply. There's a faint snicker from an older warrior, a few teeth missing, his face a weathered map of 100 winters. Soft neck, he mutters. It's not an insult. It's a diagnosis. You've heard the phrase before. Soft neck means untested. It means you haven't yet learned to let your spine fold into the saddle's curve like a spoon. You haven't yet lost the part of yourself that craves comfort. But don't worry, out here, it gets beaten out of you quickly. And it's not just the terrain or the cold that shapes these habits. It's the legacy. Genghis Khan wasn't just a conqueror. He was a builder of systems, a forger of discipline. His armies were famous for their precision and their endurance. Every man was expected to be self-sufficient, quick-thinking, and brutally practical. Sleeping with your saddle wasn't just a quirk, it was a mandate. Here's a mainstream fact. The Mongol military was structured into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Each group had responsibilities that extended beyond battle, down to who cooked, who watched the horses, who rotated guard duty. And the unspoken rule? Don't make yourself comfortable. Comfort was the mother of carelessness. You rub your shoulder and mount your horse, settling into that now familiar seat. The animal shifts beneath you, responsive, alert. Mongol horses weren't tall or sleek like European war horses. They were squat, sturdy, and smarter than most men gave them credit for. They'd follow your whistle, drink when you drank, and stand perfectly still for hours if told to. In a way, they were the only luxury the steppe allowed. But even they weren't pampered. No padded stalls, no rich oats. Just the open land, rough grasses, and the occasional frozen puddle. You'd eat what your horse could eat, drink what it could drink, Sleep where it could stand. A strange little belief floats around your mind, that horses dream when they sleep standing. Some of the older soldiers say they twitch because they're reliving old battles. Others say it's because they see ghosts, those who fell on the field and never got back up. You don't believe it, not really. But still, some nights, when your horse breathes differently, you wonder. Historians still debate how much of the Mongol warrior sleep discipline was a calculated military tactic versus an inherited nomadic lifestyle. Was it Genghis's genius, or simply what generations of survival on the steppe demanded? Regardless, the result was the same: an army that never truly rested because it never could afford to. The young soldier with the soft neck mounts up behind you, still grimacing. You give him a nod, no smile, no encouragement, just acknowledgement. He survived the night, that's enough. As the caravan begins to move, you catch a glimpse of another detail from last night: a ring of charred stones from a tiny hidden fire. Against orders. Fires were rare luxuries, used sparingly and only when necessary. Their glow could give away your position. Their warmth could soften your resolve. But someone had risked it. You look around. No one is claiming it. No one is punishing it either. Maybe they needed it. Maybe they had a reason. Or maybe, just maybe, they were testing the edge, seeing how close they could get to comfort before it bit back. A quick story passes among the ranks as the sun breaks fully above the plain. A general once punished his own son for carrying an extra blanket on campaign. The boy claimed it was for a sick comrade, but the general didn't blink. He took the blanket, cut it in two, and burned both halves. Better cold than coward, he said. Whether the story's true, who knows? But it's told with reverence. Your saddle, now warm again beneath you, squeaks faintly as your horse trots forward. The sound is familiar, like an old friend you never touch, only carry. In many ways, it is your only constant companion. A weird historical tidbit: some warriors were buried with their saddles, believing they'd need them in the afterlife. Sleep, apparently, was still going to be hard, even in eternity. You ride on. The frost begins to melt, the grass softening. But your spine remains stiff, and your muscles stay tense. Out here, softness is punished by nature before it's punished by man. You glance back once at the camp. Already, there's no sign it ever existed. The flattened grass will rise by noon. The ash from last night's fire will scatter in the wind. You could have imagined the whole thing. A dream in reverse. But your aching bones say otherwise. You keep riding. The day stretches ahead. Endless is the horizon. The Mongol steppe rolls out like a sea of faded green, broken only by the occasional cluster of low trees or the distant flicker of hoofbeats. No landmarks, no milestones, just wind and time. The saddle creaks with each step of your horse, the leather worn smooth from years of riding, eating, sleeping, and dreaming atop it. Or trying to, at least. Dreams. You've started to fear them. Not nightmares. Those have shape, color, content. You can chase them away. But it's the dreams that sneak in as flickers of memory, those ghost-like half-thoughts from a past you're not even sure was yours. You've heard others speak of the same thing: a mother's song, a red scarf, the smell of smoke. But from when? From where? The saddle's not just a place to sleep, it's a place to forget. There's a saying whispered by the older warriors, half joke, half warning: if you dream too long, you forget how to ride. It's followed by a sharp glance or a quiet laugh. But there's truth under the laugh lines. Dreamers are the ones who fall behind. Dreamers are the ones who sleep too deeply and don't wake in time for battle. You shift in your seat. The padding beneath you is thin, almost non-existent. Some of the richer generals have blankets they tuck between themselves and the hard leather, but not you, not most. A saddle softened with cloth is an invitation to rest too much, and comfort, again, is betrayal. The kind that comes slowly, in subtle ways, like a rusted buckle that breaks only when you need it most. It's not like you've never longed for softness. Everyone has. But the Mongol army is a machine built on sharpness. Sharpened instincts, sharpened discipline. Even your dreams, if they visit at all, are brief flashes. A campfire's glow, a frozen lake, the sound of wolves. Never a full story. Never enough to make you miss anything real. One of the elders rides up beside you. His face is like weathered bark, but his eyes still burn. He nods to your saddle. "Sleeping well?" he asks, which in Mongol terms could mean anything from "Are you getting soft?" to "Do you still have the will to kill?" You shrug. "Better than dirt." He smiles, just barely. Dirt is honest. That's another thing about this life. The jokes are never really jokes. Every line, every nod carries weight. You learn to speak without speaking. You learn to sleep without truly sleeping. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol warriors often rode for days without dismounting, eating dried meat stored in leather pouches, and drinking fermented mare's milk from skins tied to their saddles. Even urinating and relieving themselves was often done on horseback. Modesty was a luxury they couldn't afford. Their entire world revolved around motion. Sleep had to happen in slivers, curled into the saddle like a cat bracing for storm. You shift again and glance up. A dark cloud formation gathers to the north. Rain, maybe snow, you hope not. Wet saddles turn brutal. Every seam, every buckle becomes a razor. You've seen riders with bleeding thighs, open sores, unable to walk but still expected to ride. There's no cavalry ambulance, no sick tent. If you can sit, you ride. Fringe tidbit for tonight's tale. Some Mongols slept not just with their saddles, but with their bows tucked under one leg. Why? Because if you needed to fight the second you woke up, you didn't have time to fumble. There are even stories of men waking mid-dream to loose arrows at wolves or raiders before fully opening their eyes. Sleep was light, reflexes sharper than thought. And still, historians can't agree. Was this rigid discipline part of official military training, or something that evolved out of sheer environmental necessity? Some scholars argue that Genghis Khan's men were conditioned like elite athletes, others that their habits were simply the inevitable result of living in a land where softness equaled starvation. The debate never ends, but neither does the ride. The wind picks up, cold bites at your cheeks, and you pull your cloak tighter. It's dyed with crushed walnut and stitched at the hem, but the lining's thinning. There's no plan to replace it soon. Supplies come irregularly. You've learned to repair with sinew and patience, or go without. A bird cuts across the sky. Hawk, maybe. Your eyes track it, not out of wonder, but out of habit. If it's flying low, there might be prey. If it's circling, something might be dead. You look back at the line of riders behind you, silent, swaying slightly in rhythm. Every man with his own thoughts, or none at all. Once, a traveling monk joined the caravan for a week. He wasn't a soldier, just a wanderer hoping to reach some temple on the far side of the desert. He asked questions, lots of them, about life, death, gods, horses. You remember one in particular. Why don't you stop to rest more? Isn't it dangerous to sleep like this? Someone had answered, dryly, stopping is more dangerous. You didn't see the monk after that. Maybe he made it. Maybe he didn't. But the truth in that answer lingered. Stopping is more dangerous. Because when you stop, you remember. And remembering, like dreaming, can get you killed. Your horse stumbles briefly over a rock. You don't panic. You lean into the movement, correct, pat its neck. Your legs are so used to the stirrups they've become extensions of your mind. If you had to, you could sleepwalk a full league without falling. And perhaps you have. The sun lowers, casting long amber shadows over the steppe, and still you ride. There's no fire waiting, no camp to look forward to. The Mongol army moves like smoke, pausing only when necessary, dispersing and reforming with uncanny speed. You'll sleep in your saddle again tonight, if sleep can even be called that anymore. Your thighs ache. The same dull fire that lived in them yesterday and the day before still burns today. Your knees are locked in the position of constant readiness. You wonder sometimes if your body will remember how to stretch once the war ends, if it ends. There's an old superstition passed from soldier to soldier. When your legs forget how to walk, the war forgets how to end. You glance over your shoulder at the rows of riders behind you. A silent wave of leather-clad bodies, bows slung tight, eyes forward. No songs, no chatting. Mongol warriors aren't big on idle talk. They listen. To hoofbeats, to wind, to the rhythm of breath. There's a strange comfort in that silence. It lets your thoughts slide into place like stones in a dry riverbed. Tonight will be cold. You already know it by the way the air tastes. Sharp and thin. The kind of night where your saddle stiffens and your joints complain the moment you shift. You've learned to sleep half upright, wrapped in a sheepskin cloak, your head tilted forward just enough to rest against your horse's withers. The horse doesn't mind. These animals are trained for this life too. They're more like brothers than beasts. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol horses were small but immensely hardy, able to survive on sparse forage and travel vast distances each day. Each warrior often had 3 or 4, rotated regularly to preserve their stamina. Sleeping in the saddle wasn't a romantic flourish. It was a survival tactic for both rider and beast. You adjust the strap on your saddlebag. Inside, there's hard cheese, dried meat, and fermented mare's milk sealed tight in a bladder. You'll take small bites in the dark, chewing slowly. Not because you savor the taste, let's be honest, it's terrible. But because if you eat too fast, you'll cramp, and a cramp can knock you off your horse. And if you fall behind, someone will take your place. There's no shame in being replaced, but there's no mercy either. Fringe tidbit? Mongol warriors used to tuck small family tokens into their saddle flaps, a carved bone, a braid of hair, a painted cloth. Not for nostalgia really, but as talismans, reminders of what they were riding for. You carry none. You've forgotten what home looked like, or maybe you never had one. It doesn't matter. The saddle is your anchor now. The wind howls across the plain, not yet a storm, but a warning. Your horse snorts, adjusting its gait slightly. You shift in rhythm, staying centered. You can sleep like this. You have before. Not deeply, never that, but enough to pull your mind just slightly inward, where memories flicker like fireflies. You try not to catch them. Let them pass. Historians still argue whether this sleeping in motion was trained or simply adapted. Some believe that the youngest recruits were conditioned from childhood to nap while riding, their parents lifting them onto ponies before they could walk. Others think the discipline came later, during the brutal training of teenage initiates who were punished if they dismounted too often. The truth, like most things, is probably somewhere in between. Your eyes close, not fully, just long enough for your brain to soften at the edges. You picture a river, a still one, wide and silver under moonlight. There's a reflection on its surface, you, maybe, or someone else. You blink hard and shake it off. Dreams are dangerous. A rider coughs behind you, not a sick cough, just the kind that breaks silence like a dropped pebble. You glance back. No one's fallen. That's good. If someone collapses from exhaustion mid-ride, it's not your job to save them. That's another rule here. You ride together, but you survive alone. You reach for your saddle horn, rubbing your fingers along the polished ridge. It's smooth from years of touch, shaped by habit. Some warriors carve symbols into theirs, hawks, suns, the teeth of wolves. You never did. You preferred it plain. Just one more surface that refuses to tell stories. There's a smell in the air now, not rain, smoke, far off. Maybe another group has lit torches, maybe not. The night will tell. You keep riding, your body swaying gently like a cradle made of muscle and bone. And here's a joke someone once told you. If you dream too vividly, the saddle becomes your coffin. Nobody laughs anymore when they say it, because sometimes you hear about someone slipping into real sleep and just not waking. Their body doesn't fall, but their spirit drifts off and never returns. They ride until the horse stops and waits. By then, it's too late. You're not ready for that. Not yet. The cold deepens. You pull your cloak tighter and lean forward slightly. Your breath fogs the air. You close your eyes again, only for a heartbeat. And for just that instant, you almost feel it. A real dream. Warm hands. A voice calling you by name. Not a command, a memory. You almost lean into it. But the horse stumbles, just slightly, and you jolt awake, eyes wide. You sit straighter, breathe deeper, and the moment vanishes like dust on the wind. You whisper aloud, no one hears, just to yourself. No dreaming tonight. And you ride on. The dawn creeps across the steppe like a secret, slow and reluctant, painting everything in pale blue. You haven't dismounted in hours. The saddle creaks beneath you. Your knees buzz with that sickening, numb then pain sensation, and your jaw is tight from clenching through the night. You stretch one hand toward the rising light, then let it fall again. The sun isn't a relief, it's just a reminder that sleep didn't come again. But the column of riders begins to slow. One by one, figures peel off into loose circles, some dismounting, others loosening girths. You follow, not because you're told, no one tells anyone anything here, but because instinct says it's time. Your legs don't want to obey, and when you swing one over the horse's side, your knees almost collapse beneath you. It's funny, in a dark way, how you can travel 100 miles without touching the ground, then nearly lose the ability to stand on it. You lead your horse toward a low rise, where the grass is dry and sparse. It's not a designated camp. There are no tents, no palisades, no signs of permanence. Mongol armies don't set up anywhere. They arrive, rest, and disappear again, like a gust of wind that steals a door open, then vanishes before you can say whether it was real. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol soldiers did not carry tents individually. Large felt yurts were transported by cart, but warriors themselves slept under the open sky. Even their generals often did. It was considered weak to demand more comfort than your men. That shared austerity was part of their cohesion. You drop to one knee beside your saddle and flip it over. The underside is still warm, your only real heater. You've learned a trick. If you bunch your cloak just right and tuck it into the saddle's curve, it cradles your ribs like a crude hammock. Not soft, not really restful, but enough to prevent the bone-deep ache from climbing all the way into your spine. You glance around. Men are already asleep, curled like commas in the tall grass, their horses grazing nearby, or simply standing watch. One man leans against his mount, head tipped back, mouth open. He looks dead. He isn't. You chew on a strip of dried mutton. It tastes like rope and regret. Your stomach accepts it without thanks. In the distance, you hear a hawk cry, sharp and high. The horse beside you flicks an ear. The animal is as tired as you are. Its eyes are half-lidded, but it doesn't lie down. Mongol horses rarely do. They stand through exhaustion, through cold, through battles. You feel a strange kinship with that stubborn posture. There were whispered beliefs that dreams could be stolen while you slept on the ground. that the earth itself could reach into your mind and pull away pieces of who you were. Superstitious writers sometimes stuffed herbs into their boots or placed blades under their cloaks, not for defense, but to pin the soul in place. You don't do that, but you've considered it. You finally let your body recline, angled into the hollowed impression left by your saddle. The sky is still bleached with early light. You don't close your eyes, not yet. Instead, you stare up, watching a small cloud unravel like old thread. Your arms ache from clutching reins all night. Your wrists bear the ridges of leather pressure. And your mind? It's not empty. It's loud in that weird way things get when you're overtired. Voices echo that never spoke. Images flash behind your eyes before you even blink. That's the danger part. That's when dreams try to force their way in. Historians still debate the deeper psychology behind the Mongol endurance. Was it pure necessity, or did their culture deliberately suppress the luxury of rest? Some suggest that the fear of dreaming, of seeing visions that might weaken resolve, was tied to shamanic beliefs. Others think it was just training. The truth likely lies in the way both beliefs and necessity shape behavior until they're indistinguishable. You finally blink. The world tilts, then steadies. You remember the story one old man told near Lake Balkhash, that Genghis Khan himself once refused to sleep for 6 nights during a siege, not out of strategy, but fear. He believed the enemy's shaman had cursed the city, and that to dream during that siege would be to invite madness. It's probably not true, but then again, how many lies become truth when whispered long enough among sleepless mouths? You can't help it. Your body gives a little. Your shoulder relaxes. The breath in your lungs deepens. And something begins to unfold behind your eyes. Something slow and silvery, like water under ice. But you fight it. You shift. The grass scratches your ear. A beetle scuttles over your hand. You use that discomfort to anchor yourself. You don't want dreams tonight. You roll onto your side, facing your horse. Its eyes are closed now, but it's standing, always standing. There's a rhythm to that. You mimic it, keeping your spine aligned just so, keeping one hand on your gear, just in case. Maybe you'll sleep, maybe not. It doesn't matter. There's a phrase carved into a nearby warrior's bow grip. You saw it once while he cleaned it by moonlight. Sleep soft and wake last. It was a threat, a warning. You pull your cloak tighter, breathe in the dusty scent of grass and horse sweat, and let the morning pass without letting go completely. You'll ride again soon. Later, when you're already back in the saddle and the horizon is dancing with heat like a mirage made of memory, you start to wonder, who decided that sleep was dangerous? Because clearly someone did. The others around you don't talk about it outright, but you've noticed. The ones who drift off too easily, who let their heads bob and their shoulders slump, they're the ones who wake up wrong, dazed, slower, shouted at, or worse, ignored. And in the Mongol ranks, being ignored is far more frightening than being punished. Your horse walks on, steady and sure over the shallow rise. You hear the wind before you feel it, soft at first, then sharper, like an invisible whip teasing your cheek. A few men tie scarves over their mouths. The dust rises in thin ghosts along the road. Today's ride is slower. You're entering a contested region, so the pace shifts from relentless to watchful. You know the rhythm. Sprint, scout, sprint again. Rest doesn't factor in. The only rest comes from the ritual of moving forward. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol armies employed a complex system of rotating patrols, messengers, and watch lines that allowed them to maintain extraordinary awareness of their surroundings. Their sleep cycles were fragmented and irregular, sometimes 20 minutes at a time, broken by horn signals or bird calls. This kind of interrupted sleep does something to your brain. You feel it in the way your thoughts stutter, how words lose their flavor, how even silence begins to sound crowded. You look down at your hands gripping the reins and realize they're too tight again. Your knuckles ache, white and bone bright. You force yourself to loosen them. The horse responds with a grateful twitch. Behind you, a rider hums something tuneless and strange. You turn slightly, just enough to glimpse his face, sun-cracked, expressionless. He's not really awake, not really asleep either. He's in that middle place Mongol warriors mastered, the moving trance. Fringe tidbit. It's said that elite couriers in the Yam system, imperial messengers who rode for hundreds of miles without pause, could induce horse sleep. They trained their bodies to doze in microbursts, upright in the saddle, eyes half open. The horses, bred for balance and patience, adjusted their gait to match. No written manual taught this. It was passed from mentor to apprentice wordlessly. You wonder what your own face looks like now. Hollow-eyed, grimy? You haven't seen a reflection in days, weeks maybe. And even if you did, what would it show? Not a noble soldier, not a hero of the steppe. Just someone carrying fatigue like a saddlebag full of rocks, trying not to spill it. The wind picks up again. You pull your hood tighter. Ahead, a banner flaps once, then stills. That's the signal. Dismount. Your thighs groan in protest as you swing down. The ground feels foreign underfoot, like you're walking on someone else's memory. The grass is sharp, brittle with drought. You kneel beside your horse, run a hand down its flank. Warmth pulses there, a comfort, a heartbeat that isn't yours. The group spreads out, each man finding his own odd posture of vigilance and collapse. There's a choreography to it, sleep without surrender. Most lie half-propped against saddles or gear. One man snoozes sitting upright, legs crossed like a monk. Another curls under his horse's belly, muttering something into the beast's ribs. It works for him, apparently. Historians still argue whether the Mongols' resistance to conventional sleep was deliberate cultural engineering or simply the consequence of constant movement. Some anthropologists point to early nomadic patterns, children swaddled tight and rocked on horseback from infancy, trained from the beginning to ignore comfort. Others claim it was the landscape itself, harsh, open, full of threats, that shaped this sleepless vigilance. You don't care which is true. All you know is that your body wants rest, but your brain keeps whispering warnings. You stare into the sunlit dust, daring your eyelids to close. And then, something happens. It's not sleep, not exactly. More like a blink that takes too long. In that sliver of unguarded time, a vision drifts in. A riverbank, distant and green. A child splashing near a low tree. Is it your memory, or something borrowed from someone else's dream? You snap upright. That's why you don't let go. That's the danger of dreams. They arrive wearing old faces, and you forget they're liars. You rub your face hard. The grit in your skin grates like sandpaper. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs, a wet, tired sound. You stand, stretch, walk a few steps. The movement helps, barely. In the distance, dust kicks up. A scout returns, riding hard. No words exchanged, just hand signals. Time to go. You groan inside, but your body obeys. You tighten straps, check your gear, pat your horse's neck. It nuzzles your sleeve briefly, like it understands. Then it turns, ready to run again. And just like that, the spell is broken. The dream, if that's what it was, is gone. You mount up. The steppe stretches ahead, endless and unforgiving. But then again, so are you. The next day, or maybe the one after, who's counting anymore? You begin to see signs that another tribe passed through here. The earth tells their story in hoof prints, fire pits, and waste buried only halfway. You lean over your saddle, tracing the hard divots with your eyes. They rode heavy. Too many wagons, too few scouts. Amateurs. Your commander grunts from behind you. You don't turn. He won't say it out loud, but you can feel his judgment humming in the silence. You agree with it. Movement is everything. If you sleep too deep, if your camp sits too long, if your fire burns too high, Someone is watching, always. It's in your blood now, this awareness. You can't relax, even when told to. You're sharper in the saddle than lying flat. You've learned to twist comfort into suspicion. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol army moved in tightly controlled groups called tumans, units of 10,000 men, subdivided into decimals, right down to squads of 10. This organization allowed them to adapt instantly, shifting from a march to battle formation in moments, even waking from sleep. Your own group isn't large, but it moves like muscle memory. You eat, you ride, you breathe like a single organism. One pulse stretched over the plains. No one gives direct orders unless absolutely necessary. You follow gestures, glances, shared expectations. That's why, when you get the signal to stop early that evening, a strange ripple goes through the men. Suspicion. It's too soon. The sun is still up. Still, you obey. You dismount, crouch low, scan the horizon. You feel like a hawk with no wings, all watching and no escape. The wind is stiff again, carrying scents of ash and animal. You catch something beneath it. Meat, maybe? No. Burnt fur. It hits the back of your throat. Someone mutters about wolves. Fringe tidbit. Mongol soldiers sometimes domesticated wolf pups, not for war, but as symbols. Killing a wolf was taboo to some tribes, sacred to others. But having one around camp was thought to bring foresight. One traveler claimed to see a commander feed his wolf before feeding his men. There are no wolves tonight. Just you, your horse, and that sour wind. You pull your saddle off slowly, deliberately. No one talks. A few men dig shallow sleeping pits with their hands, just enough to reduce their silhouettes. You do the same, hands working through tough earth. No tools. Tools make noise. When the time comes to rest, you curl around the saddle once more. It's worn into the shape of you now, or you into it. You wedge a water skin under your hip to keep your spine aligned. You tell yourself it helps. It doesn't. Historians still argue whether the Mongol saddle was designed intentionally for dual use as both a riding aid and a resting implement, or whether it simply became one out of necessity. Some suggest it was superstition. Lying without your saddle left your spirit vulnerable to attack. Others say it was about discipline, the constant reminder of duty pressing into your side. Whatever the reason, you feel the weight of it tonight. Not just the leather and the wood frame, but what it represents. The impossibility of letting go. You shut your eyes anyway. For a while, your thoughts run wild. You think about your first raid, about your brother's cracked tooth, about the time you watched lightning hit the ground not 20 paces away. You remember the smell of ozone, the way your horse didn't flinch. You envy that horse. Eventually, your body overrides your mind. Not sleep exactly, but stillness. Deep, unmoving stillness. You drift through it like a leaf on cold water. Then, crack. Your eyes snap open. A branch? A misstep? You can't tell. You don't move. Moving too fast is a mistake. Movement catches eyes. So, you listen. Nothing. Then, a cough. A dry one, human. Too far for alarm, close enough for caution. You stay down, fingers grazing the curve of your saddle like it's a shield. In a way, it is. A few minutes pass. The tension thins. Someone shifts. A throat clears. Life creeps back in. You don't sleep again that night. Instead, you stare at the stars, those distant campfires of the sky, until they blur. You count them, not to fall asleep, but to remember you're still awake. In the morning, you'll ride again, and your saddle will still be there, stubborn and loyal, like you. The next morning, the ground has frosted over. Not a full freeze, just a silver whisper clinging to grass and leather. Your breath ghosts in front of you, puffing with every exhale. You don't speak. No one does. Words feel too loud right now, like they might shatter the thin calm that settled over the steppe. Your saddle is cold against your ribs, still bearing the shallow imprint of your sleep. Or, more accurately, your long-limbed pretending. You pat it once, out of habit. There's no superstition in the gesture, just familiarity. You'd miss this thing if it were gone. Even though it's ruined your spine. Even though it's probably the reason you wake up feeling like you've aged a decade. You mount quickly and silently, your horse snorting in protest at the cold bit. The line starts moving. No trumpet, no flag, no shouted command. Just that subtle ripple, like a flock turning in unison. You feel proud of that. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol cavalry was legendary not just for speed, but for unity. Their signal system, whistles, flags, drums, and smoke, was so precise that they could coordinate multi-pronged attacks across miles. Some records claim they traveled 100 miles in a day, switching mounts mid-gallop. You're not riding 100 miles today, maybe 30, but every hoofbeat feels like ritual now. The rhythm lodges in your chest, syncing with your heartbeat. You pass dry riverbeds, bones bleached white, a pile of charred wood that might have been someone's breakfast or someone's funeral. Either way, you don't stop. Around midday, the group halts at a small stream, frozen around the edges but still flowing in the center. Horses drink first, then men. You kneel, cupping icy water into your mouth. It shocks you, and that jolt keeps you alert. You glance down. Your own reflection stares back. Weathered, wind-burned, older than yesterday. You try to smile at it, just to see what that looks like. It's not flattering. Fringe tidbit. According to an obscure Persian source, some Mongol warriors believed mirrors and water reflections could steal your dreams if you looked into them too long after waking. They'd splash their faces with mud to confuse the spirits. No one's splashing mud here, but you still blink away the image fast, just in case. You're itchy beneath your layers. Felt and wool don't breathe well, especially after weeks without a proper bath. You scratch at your collarbone, pull the collar tighter to block the wind, and swing back onto your horse. This time, you ride rear guard. Not glamorous, but important. You like it, honestly. No one sneaks up behind you, and you get to watch everyone else. Who's slumping, who's twitchy, who's about to fall off their mount. You can learn a lot from a man's posture. Your friend Orlok, if he can even be called that, rides 2 horses ahead, one eyebrow perpetually raised. He's the kind who sleeps so lightly that a blink might wake him. You envy that. You also resent it a little. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders truly trained themselves to sleep in brief bursts while in motion. Some claim they mastered microsleep, resting one hemisphere of the brain at a time, like dolphins. Others scoff and suggest it was more about sheer exhaustion, pass out or perish. Either way, Orlok seems to manage. You don't, but you pretend to. You let your body sway with the motion of your horse, letting your eyelids drift just enough to pass as relaxed. You count heartbeats. You listen to wind against hide. You wait for the next crack, the next twitch of tension that means danger. And then you see it. In the distance, smoke. Thin, vertical, deliberate. Someone's fire. Too clean to be accidental. Too careless to be yours. Your commander sees it too. His fist goes up. The line halts. A heartbeat later, scouts peel off silently, like threads unwinding from a spool. You stay where you are, hand on your bow, thumb resting on the notch of an arrow. You don't expect battle, not today, but you don't expect rest either, not ever. While the scouts vanish into the horizon, you focus on the saddle beneath you again. It's hard, unforgiving, but it keeps your muscles alert. You adjust your weight just slightly, enough to relieve pressure on your right hip. There's comfort in routine discomfort. You think about how strange that is. But isn't that the whole point? Comfort was betrayal. Not in the dramatic sense. No one's going to behead you for lying on a feather pillow. But comfort softened the edge of readiness. It dulled the instinct. You'd seen men get too warm, too safe, too certain. They didn't last. So you sit tall in your discomfort, as if it's armor. You nod once at the saddle, almost grateful. And when the scouts return and the orders ripple down the line like wind through grass, you're already leaning forward, heels nudging your horse. Ready. The hills roll gently now, not steep enough to exhaust your horse, but enough to make you shift in the saddle more often. Every incline reminds your thighs that they've been working non-stop for weeks. The trees are sparse out here, scraggly, wind-bent things that look like they gave up growing tall a long time ago. The smoke you saw earlier, it's gone. Not because the fire's out, but because you've looped around it. A quiet decision made by the commander, whose poker face is so perfect he could be carved from soapstone. You're not attacking today. Not yet. Maybe not at all. Instead, the company rides slower now, curved like a shepherd's hook around the unseen campfire. It's a strategy that doesn't feel like anything at first, just wandering, but you've been in the army long enough to know better. You're preparing to become ghosts. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol forces often staged feigned retreats, using precise arcs and sweeping diversions to lure enemies out of strongholds. These tactics were so effective that entire castles emptied themselves chasing what looked like fleeing riders, only to be encircled and crushed. That's what today feels like the quiet before bait is taken. The real challenge isn't the planning, it's the waiting. You've always hated waiting, especially when you're pretending not to wait. You chew a strip of dried meat, not because you're hungry, but because it gives your jaw something to do. Your fingers trace the edge of your bow, the slight fray in its sinew grip. You don't need to fix it, yet, but you file the thought away. Wrap it tonight, maybe, if you get the time. That's the game now. The sun arcs lower, setting the sky aflame behind you. In front, it's all blue shadow and dust haze. A few horses snort, one rider sneezes. Everyone pretends not to react. Your ribs ache, not from injury, just from holding tension like a tightly coiled spring. You envy the horses in a way. They don't worry. They just move, stop, graze, move again. If they die, they don't reflect on it. They don't picture it in advance. But you do. Fringe tidbit: some Mongol warriors, especially junior ones, were said to whisper apologies to their horses before battle. Not from guilt, more from gratitude. Horses weren't pets, they were limbs. Losing one was like losing a hand or a heartbeat. So yes, you sometimes talk to your horse, quietly, in your head. Nothing dramatic, just little things. You imagine it helps. It's almost dusk now. That dangerous time when shadows lie and your eyes play tricks. The kind of light that turns shrubs into crouched men and rocks into huddled scouts. You blink often, trying to reset your vision. Doesn't help. Your ribs ache, not from injury, just from holding tension like a tightly coiled spring. You envy the horses in a way. They don't worry. They just move, stop, graze, move again. If they die, they don't reflect on it. They don't picture it in advance. But you do. Fringe tidbit: some Mongol warriors, especially junior ones, were said to whisper apologies to their horses before battle. Not from guilt, more from gratitude. Horses weren't pets. They were limbs. Losing one was like losing a hand or a heartbeat. So yes, you sometimes talk to your horse, quietly, in your head. Nothing dramatic, just little things. You imagine it helps. It's almost dusk now, that dangerous time when shadows lie and your eyes play tricks. The kind of light that turns shrubs into crouched men and rocks into huddled scouts. You blink often, trying to reset your vision. Doesn't help. You're told to dismount. Orders ripple quietly again, half gestures and hoarse whispers. You slide down, legs trembling just a little from too much stillness. Your saddle thumps on the ground. You don't lie down. No one does. Not yet. Instead, you crouch near a windbreak of rocks. You're not hiding exactly, but you're not visible either. You're part of a screen now, one side of a net. And you wait. Historians still argue whether Mongol patience was learned or cultural. Some suggest it came from their hunting traditions, tracking prey over days without sleep or fire. Others think it was drilled into them from childhood, part of the same training that had toddlers riding sheep before they could walk. You don't know. You just know your knees hurt, and you'd sell a toe for 5 minutes of stretching. The moon rises clean and sharp, a sliver of silver that feels way too bright. You pull your hood tighter. Your breath fogs in the cold. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once, then again. You can't tell if that's a real owl or a signal. You assume both. A rider beside you whispers, "Soon." You nod. You don't speak. You're afraid if you do, your stomach might growl audibly, or worse, your brain might spill out every nervous thought it's been storing. So instead, you think of your saddle again. It's back there, by your horse, propped against a low rock. Not comfortable, never has been, but it's yours. Shaped like your body, not by design, but by relentless repetition. You could pick it out from 100 others in the dark, just by smell and scuff marks. And weirdly, it calms you. Like a talisman, the command comes. Not a word, but a motion. 1 hand, 3 fingers, then 2. And then you move. Slowly, softly. No dramatic charge, no wild yelling. Just silence and precision. You step across cold grass, every footfall calculated. The group glides, not marches. There's something beautiful about it. If you weren't so anxious, you might puke. Ahead, the campfire flickers into view. Just one. Maybe a decoy, maybe the real thing. You grip your bow tighter. The string hums with tension. Then, a bird call. Then, nothing. No answer. You freeze. 1 beat. 2. A shape rises near the fire. Human. Cloaked. Unsure. Your breath catches. The trap hasn't sprung yet, but it's close. And somehow, your mind drifts back to your saddle again. That damn awful saddle. Because if this goes badly, you'll never lie on it again. And if this goes well, you'll still lie on it tonight. Isn't that something? You step back. Not a retreat, just a rebalancing. That figure near the fire? Not a scout, not a decoy. Just a man, drowsy and fumbling for something near the flames. Maybe a kettle, maybe a blade. Doesn't matter. He hasn't seen you. Yet. The hand signals go up again. A pause, then a single nod. And just like that, the first arrow whispers through the night. No shout, no bugle, just silence followed by a thud. A sound so soft it might have been a bird hitting the grass. The man drops. And the fire, once warm and flickering, suddenly becomes the brightest thing in the world. Because now the others are moving. Shadow figures leaping from under cloaks and behind crates, startled and shouting. Now it begins. You rise like a tide with your brothers. There is no battle cry. The Mongols do not believe in giving warnings. You are the warning. You are the shape in the smoke. You are the end of someone's very bad dream. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol raids were designed for speed, surprise, and psychological collapse. By the time victims knew they were under attack, the arrows were already falling, and their leaders already dead. You loose your first shot mid-stride. It finds someone's thigh. Not fatal, but disabling. You're aiming to slow, to confuse, to unhinge. And it works. The camp falls into chaos. Pots scatter, horses scream. A man runs straight into one of your comrades and folds like paper. A cooking ladle clatters nearby, utterly out of place, yet real. That's war, comedy and tragedy sharing a tent. You stay on the fringe, circling, keeping your angles. You don't enter the heart of the scuffle. That's not your job. You're a falcon, not a wolf. Fringe tidbit. It said some Mongol archers could shoot while galloping backward. You believe it. You've seen things that shouldn't be possible. Like a kid barely old enough to grow a mustache splitting a running squirrel with one arrow, then laughing about it over soup. You don't laugh now. You move. Each shot is a breath. Each breath a choice. You don't count how many fall. You're not here to count. But your mind does weird math anyway. That man near the fire? He's not moving. The guy with the ladle? Probably unconscious. The horse limping by the edge? Might have been yours if you were born a village over. These thoughts creep in, not to distract you, but to remind you you're still human under all this. You leap over a bucket, then duck low. Someone's swinging a curved blade now, more in panic than precision. You sidestep, knock, release. His shoulder jerks back, and he spins away. Done. Historians still argue whether Mongols relied more on fear or logistics. Was it the stories that made enemies crumble, or the actual tactics? Did people give up faster because they'd heard what you were capable of, or because you left them no time to react? You think it's both. Fear is a weapon. Timing is the blade. Minutes pass like hours, or maybe the other way around. The smoke thickens, not from burning buildings, just scattered fires kicked over in the chaos. You cough once. The taste of ash settles in your mouth, bitter and dry, like bad coffee grounds. Then, nothing. Not silence, but something close. The yelling stops. The fighting slows. The survivors run, and no one follows, because the trap has been sprung, and the bait was bait. Your company regroups near the original fire. No celebration, no cheers, just head counts and small wounds being examined. One man's got a torn sleeve and a bloody elbow. He shrugs, "Not my worst Tuesday." You smile, just slightly. Then comes the part you always dread. Search and sort. You sweep through the remnants. Supplies? Take them. Weapons? Definitely. Messages? Always. Even bad ones tell you something. You find a half-scorched scroll, probably poetry. You hand it to the officer without a word. Someone else finds salted pork. Jackpot. One rider quietly pulls off a boot from a fallen enemy. It fits. You say nothing. Your horse is still where you left it. Thank the stars. You run a hand down its flank, reassuring it. Yourself. Then you collect your saddle. It's still warm, still yours. You sit beside it, not on it, not yet. You let the adrenaline fade, let your breath slow. And for a moment, you think about comfort again, that strange, treacherous word. You were comfortable 10 minutes ago, waiting in the dark. Now, after arrows and blood and smoke, you're weirdly steadier. Maybe comfort isn't betrayal. Maybe the danger is how you get it. But that's not something you'll figure out tonight. You pull a strip of cloth from your pouch and wipe down your bow. It doesn't need it, but it's the ritual, the muscle memory. Clean, restore, repeat. You don't talk. No one does. Not much. Someone hums a tune, off-key, but familiar. And when you finally lie back, resting your head against the saddle's stiff leather, you don't sleep, not right away. But the dream will come. And when it does, it won't be peaceful, but it will be yours. The dream comes hard and fast. You're galloping, wind in your face. Hills roll past like waves, and the sun, too bright, too close, burns through your eyelids even though they're closed. You're not sure where you're going, only that you have to keep riding. You feel the weight of something wrapped in silk on your back, but you can't turn to look. If you stop, you'll fall. If you fall, you'll never wake up again. Then the hooves stop. You lurch awake. It's still dark, though the sky is starting to lighten in that soft way it does when dawn is thinking about showing up but hasn't committed. You sit up. Your back aches in that familiar saddle-sculpted way. Your hips numb from sleeping on a small rock. You mutter something halfway between a curse and a prayer. You're alive. You're cold. You're sore. So far, so normal. Around you, the others are stirring. Quiet movements, quick, disciplined. One man cracks his neck. Another adjusts the wrap on his bow hand. Someone else checks the saddle girth on his pony, just to be sure. Always just to be sure. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol cavalry could travel up to 100 miles per day by rotating between 3 to 5 horses per rider. That's how they stayed ahead, outrunning rumor, scout, and messenger alike. You're down to 2 horses now. One you're riding, one you're letting recover. The third, your best one, died a week ago from a cracked hoof and bad luck. You didn't cry, but your throat hurt for hours. Fringe tidbit: some warriors reportedly named their saddles, not the horses, the saddles, because it was the saddle that bore them into every fight, and the saddle they trusted not to slip when everything else did. Yours doesn't have a name, but you think of it as a kind of spine, your second backbone, the one that doesn't break. You stretch your arms out wide, slow and deliberate. The sky stretches too, pale indigo bleeding into bruised gold. A hawk cries somewhere overhead. That sound always cuts a hole in your thoughts. You like it. No orders have come yet. That's a kind of luxury. So you sit with your saddle in front of you and begin the ritual. First, the stirrups. You check the leather straps for wear. No fraying? Good. Next, the saddle horns. You rub the edges with a scrap of wool. Knock the dried mud from the base. Tiny flakes fall into your lap. Then the underpadding, where the leather meets felt, meets horse. You smooth it flat. You pat it twice, like a baker testing dough. You're not alone in this. Around the camp, men are performing versions of the same ritual. Some sit cross-legged, some kneel. Some don't even look, just work by feel, fast and sure. There's a reverence here. Not religious exactly, but sacred in its own way. Because if the saddle fails, you fall. If you fall, you die. That's not superstition. That's gravity. Historians still argue whether Mongol victory stemmed more from cultural unity or sheer strategic ruthlessness. Was it their shared code that bound them like family, or the cold calculus of constant motion? Was it loyalty or fear? You suspect it's both, with a pinch of boredom. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. The waiting is the hardest part, not the blood, not the killing, not the galloping. It's the in-between. And in the in-between, your saddle becomes your shelter, your bench, your desk, your companion. You've eaten meals balanced on it, repaired boots against it, written home on its rigid back. If someone handed you a violin, you could probably play it like a cello. That's how deeply the curve of it has imprinted into your life. You finish the inspection. Satisfied, you settle back against it and chew a strip of dried mutton. It tastes like boot leather dipped in smoke. Delicious. Across from you, a younger soldier squints at his own saddle. He pokes at a buckle, uncertain. You nudge him with your foot. If it creaks when you shift, it's not tight enough. If it pinches your mount, you'll see it in the eyes. He blinks, then nods. You don't say more. The saddle teaches you to say less. Someone whistles twice. The signal. Time to move. Camp folds inward with the precision of origami. No tents to pack, just bedrolls, satchels, meat wraps, and fire coals buried under soil. You douse your sleep with sand and saddle up. The saddle is still warm. It always is. You heave yourself up and feel that familiar cradle, your weight locking into place like a puzzle piece. Now you're whole again. You ride. The morning air cuts clean and sharp, like shaved ice. Birds scatter from bushes. A fox darts across your path. No one flinches. Even the ponies keep steady. You glance over your shoulder at the valley shrinking behind you. Someone will find that campsite later. Maybe weeks from now, maybe never. If they do, they'll wonder, who stayed here? They won't find names. They'll barely find ashes. But maybe, if they look close, they'll find the imprint of a saddle pressed into the grass. And maybe, just maybe, they'll understand something about you, about comfort, about duty, about what it means to be shaped by the thing you sit on every single day. You ride without speaking. The air is brisk, still dew wet. Your breath makes tiny clouds that vanish before you finish exhaling. The pony beneath you snorts once, then settles into the rhythm it knows too well. Step, step, step. Pause, shift weight, listen. This isn't galloping terrain. Too many roots, dips, hidden holes waiting to snap a leg. So you ride slow, careful. Your saddle creaks once, just once, and you instinctively lean forward to adjust the pressure. There, now it's quiet again. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol horses weren't war horses in the traditional Western sense. Short, stocky, built for endurance, not drama. Think of them more like the marathon runners of the steppes than knights' chargers. They could survive on frozen grass and go for days with little water. You reach a clearing, a pause point. The group halts. No need to dismount. Just stretch your legs in the stirrups and look around. The world is painted in early sun now. Golden brushstrokes on long grass. Tree trunks striped with light. Everything looks touched by flame, but the good kind, the kind that warms, not devours. A bird flits past, wings beating hard. Your pony flicks an ear but doesn't startle. You smile, just a little. You think about how weirdly poetic this all is, and then immediately hate yourself for it. Because poetic gets you killed. Fringe tidbit. Some soldiers refused to sleep without turning their saddles upside down first, to empty out the dreams. They believed that dreams left residue in the leather, sticky and dangerous, like venom or mold. You tried it once. Your saddle smelled like wet dog for a week. Never again. You press forward. The path narrows. Branches whip past, some scratching your sleeve. It's almost meditative. The pace, the quiet, the way the forest breathes around you. If you were anyone else, this could almost be called peaceful. But you're not anyone else. You're a rider of the steppe. Peace is just a shape-shifted version of suspense. The lead scout raises a hand. Everyone halts again. This time you do dismount. Something's off. You walk your horse forward, gently. Boots whisper on leaves. The ground is softer than it should be. No birds singing now. You notice it. Everyone notices it. Ahead, in a patch of churned-up soil, lies something, half buried under earth. A shield. Wood, cracked. A corner of cloth, torn. Too bright for the forest. You crouch. Touch it. Still damp. Fresh. Historians still argue whether the Mongol army's success came more from strategic intelligence or psychological manipulation. Did they truly outmaneuver everyone, or just make people think they couldn't be beaten? The answer lies in moments like this, in what's left behind, a shield, a footprint, a trail of broken twigs, and in how quickly you learn to read them. The captain leans down next to you. One glance is enough. He gestures back. No speaking, just motion. The group fans out. 5 men go forward on foot. You tighten the saddle straps again, just slightly. Not because they're loose, but because you need to do something. Then you wait. It's the longest 6 minutes of your life. They return, nothing seen, but that doesn't mean nothing's there. So you move again, slower this time, eyes sharp, every sound a signal. Your saddle creaks once more, but you don't fix it. Let it creak. Maybe the sound will scare off whatever's watching. You ride until the sun is high and the shadows have nowhere left to hide. When you stop, it's in a tiny glade surrounded by saplings and flat stones. The captain gives a nod. Rest, for now. You slide off your pony and sit on your saddle like a stool, elbows on knees. You eat a handful of dried apricots, savoring each one like it's the last food on earth. It might be. Someone's singing under their breath, a song you almost recognize. Something about a fox and a girl and a stolen chicken. Mongol lyrics always feel like parables with punchlines. You remember hearing that song as a kid, before war, before leather straps and raw knuckles and scars that never fade. You liked the chicken best. You always hoped it escaped. Now you know better. Dreams don't survive out here. Only saddles do. Because comfort, real comfort, the kind with soft beds and warm baths and long nights spent talking about nothing, is a form of betrayal. It dulls your edge, makes you hesitate, and hesitation is death. Quick, quiet, permanent. You stretch out beside your saddle, one hand still resting on it. You can sleep like this. You have slept like this 100 times. The sun through the leaves dapples your face. You feel a breath of wind. You let your eyes close. In another lifetime, maybe you'd have written poems. But in this one, your saddle is your pen, and the land beneath you, the forest, the steppe, the glade and gulch, is your parchment. You sleep like a soldier, one hand on the reins, the other on your past. Sleep doesn't last long out here. One bird call too sharp, one twig snapping the wrong way, and your eyes open. No grogginess, no stretch and yawn. You're just awake, instantly, like a switch has been thrown. Your hand's still on your saddle. Of course it is. You sit up slowly, letting your muscles remember their shape. They grumble. Knees crack. The ache behind your shoulder blade feels like a thumb pressing in from an invisible hand. But you're used to that too. The camp is quiet. Most of the riders are still in half-doze mode, backs propped against trees, heads slumped. But a few eyes meet yours. You're never fully asleep, only waiting for the next move. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol warriors followed a rough rule of resting in short, staggered bursts. It wasn't about sleep cycles or circadian rhythms. It was about being ready, always. Someone had to be alert. You chew a strip of jerky, not because you're hungry, but because your jaw wants movement. It's tough as old rope, seasoned with too much salt and something vaguely gamey. You try not to think about where it came from. If the meat has a name, best not to know it. Across the glade, one of the younger riders is talking to his saddle. Not metaphorically. He's whispering to it. Soft, rhythmic muttering, like he's trying to lull it into loyalty. Fringe tidbit. Some steppe warriors believed that saddles absorbed not just the heat of your body, but the shape of your soul. That, if you broke a saddle too quickly, say, borrowed someone else's, you risked confusing your horse and even yourself. Saddles weren't just gear. They were identity. Yours is old, worn smooth in certain places, carved in others with tiny etchings, some decorative, some not. A flower here, a knot there. One side has a single burn mark, small as a fingertip. You remember when it happened. Lightning struck a tree 5 paces away. Your saddle smoked, and so did you. You pack up without speaking. Everything in its place, just like always. A roll of felt, a half-empty flask, a knife tied in a loop near the backstrap. Your horse nuzzles the side of your head, not affectionately, more like, "Are we doing this again?" You don't blame him. The patrol moves again.
You take the middle position this time. Safe, but not soft. The lead is for scouts. The rear is for veterans and troublemakers. The middle? The middle is where those who follow orders quietly live. And, hopefully, don't die. The forest gives way to scrubland. Patches of grass and low bushes, earth baked hard beneath the sun. You see the occasional bird lifting off into the sky, startled by your passage. Otherwise, it's just hoofbeats and dust. Your saddle squeaks, again. You've stopped trying to fix it. You're thinking about a dream you almost had. Not a full dream, just a sliver. Something with firelight and a soft blanket. Something dangerously warm.
It flickered behind your eyelids for a moment before the waking world took it. Historians still argue whether Mongol saddles were intentionally uncomfortable or just the byproduct of necessity. Some say the stiff leather was a kind of discipline. Others believe it was simply what they had. No luxury, no cushioning, just raw survival. But you know better. You feel it. The saddle isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to remind you of motion, of posture, of tension. If you let your guard down, it jabs your ribs. Like a friend who's terrible at giving hugs but excellent at saving your life. You ride past the remains of a campfire, someone else. Ashes still faintly warm. A few rocks in a circle. Bones, animal, probably, or hopefully. You don't check too closely. The captain glances once. Message received. No stopping. Eyes open. Stay ready. You shift in your saddle, feeling the familiar friction. Your thighs are so calloused they could probably repel arrows. You roll your shoulders, then crack your neck, one side, then the other. The noise is oddly satisfying. Your thoughts drift again, this time to a story you heard as a boy, about a Mongol warrior who never dismounted for 7 straight days. Ate on horseback, slept on horseback, even, well, everything on horseback. Supposedly, his saddle fused to him, became part of his spine. Eventually, when he died, they had to bury the horse too. Not out of respect, just because no one could tell where the man ended and the saddle began. You smirk. It's absurd. And yet, you glance down at your own setup. Give it 10 more years, who knows? The sun is setting now, low and amber. The wind picks up, gentle but persistent. It smells like rain in the distance. Not here yet, but on its way. You ride faster, because rain and saddles do not mix. Wet leather rubs in all the wrong places. A single soggy ride can mean days of chafed misery and saddle sores. The kind that don't just sting, they seethe. So the camp stops early, picking a spot near a rocky outcrop where the wind is less brutal. You unsaddle your pony, carefully, like always. Check the straps, clean off the dirt, hang it over a log to dry. Even after all these years, you never leave it on the ground. That would be like sleeping with your face in the mud. You settle beside it once more, your back resting against a boulder, knees drawn up. The clouds are bruising now, purple and deep gray, swirling in long brush strokes overhead. Somewhere out there, lightning is flashing. You smell it again, metal and ozone. Nothing, just eyes the horizon. You don't need words. Your saddle will ride again tomorrow, because that's the deal you made. With the wind, with the road, with whoever it is out there who listens to warriors who sleep in silence and dream only when they dare. You don't wake up screaming. Instead, your eyes open like shutters, quiet, deliberate, and the first thing you do is check the saddle. Still there, right where you propped it, balanced on a couple of flat stones to keep the dew off. It's shaped like a throne in miniature, though far less regal and far more unforgiving. But to you, it's comfort. The sky is steel-colored. Morning hasn't quite begun. That awkward hour where the stars fade but the sun hasn't yet made its entrance. Everything feels paused, like the world's holding its breath. You listen. Nothing but the hiss of wind over dry grass and the soft snort of a half-sleeping horse. Somewhere, a crow squawks rude and early, as always. You stretch out your legs slowly, rolling one ankle, then the other. Your lower back grumbles. Your shoulders pop. You press your palm against the front edge of the saddle, and the cool leather stings slightly like it knows you overslept by a minute. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol patrols operated under a strict rotation system. Riders didn't get off days, they got off hours. Often just enough to do minor maintenance, gulp something edible, and lie flat for 25 minutes, if the captain liked you. You didn't expect luxury, but even the harshest routines develop their own rhythms. And this morning, the rhythm's off. Your horse is tense. He's standing stiff, ears up, not grazing, not dozing. He's staring at something just beyond the rocks. You follow his gaze. Nothing. Or so it seems. Then a flash of movement, too smooth for a human. You move to your saddle, not to ride, but to check what's under it. Your small bow, your quiver, your backup dagger wrapped in felt. All there, just in case. You whisper something to the horse, not a word so much as a sound. A murmur he knows means ready. Fringe tidbit: some Mongol riders trained their horses to recognize vocal tones rather than words. No commands, no whistles, just emotion encoded. Joy, urgency, caution. The bond was more than mechanical. It bordered on telepathic. You shoulder your saddle, not because you need to ride this instant, but because if something happens, you don't want to choose between fleeing and finding your gear. Comfort is betrayal, remember? You move quietly, every step deliberate. The terrain here is rocky, uneven. One misstep and you'll give yourself away. You remember the drill: stay low, stay aware, and never turn your back on an unknown. A rabbit darts out from the brush and you nearly laugh. Nearly. But something still feels wrong. The moment passes. The tension breaks. Slowly, your horse resumes his grazing. But you don't relax just yet. Historians still debate the depth of animal training within Mongol armies. Were their horses truly that responsive? Or have centuries of myth inflated their instincts? Were the whispered tales of steeds outrunning arrows and sensing ambushes really fact? Or folklore? You adjust your saddle on your shoulder. The weight is familiar, grounding. Not heavy, just present. A reminder. You remember what an old sergeant once told you. The first time your saddle saves your life, you'll stop calling it a burden. At the time, you thought he was being poetic. Then came the river ambush, when you used your saddle as a makeshift shield to block a thrown axe. It cracked the wood. It cracked your rib, too. But it didn't crack your head. So, yes. Burden? No. Partner? Warden? Definitely. You head back toward the rest of the group, who are starting to stir. No fire, of course. Smoke draws eyes, and you prefer not to be seen unless you're already aiming an arrow. The sun finally shows its face, soft gold smeared across a tired blue canvas. You squint and think, another day, another ride, another 1,000 steps between now and home. Though home is such a generous word. You haven't seen a permanent roof in years. As you retighten the saddle straps, you notice something else, a small tear along the edge of the seat. Not big, but you run your fingers over it like a bruise. Saddles show their wear in quiet places. You'll need to repair it soon. 1 stitch today is 10 fewer tomorrow. That's the logic your father taught you, back when you thought saddles were only for goats and festivals. You miss him sometimes, in the quiet ways that sneak up when the wind stops. The captain gives the signal. No words, just a nod and a tilt of his chin. You mount. The first few minutes back in the saddle are always rough. Bones remember sleep, and the leather remembers its own stiffness. You shift your weight until the pressure settles in its familiar places. Tailbone, thighs, knees. a cradle of movement and tension. You ride. The hills stretch long and low ahead of you. There's no destination marked, just forward. That's enough. You think about dreams again, or rather, the absence of them. Mongol warriors didn't talk about what they saw in sleep. If they did, it was in riddles or with laughter. But mostly, it was silence. As if naming a dream gave it too much weight, or worse, gave it power. You once had a dream of falling, not from a cliff, not from a tower, from your saddle, just sliding off, endlessly. You woke sweating, heart pounding. Ever since, you've wrapped a small leather cord around your wrist each night, tied to the saddle horn. Not for safety, for symbolism. Because the only fall that really matters is the one you never see coming. Your horse snorts. You refocus. Another patrol shift. Another stretch of silence, wind, and wary eyes. You breathe in dust and history. You let the saddle press back into you, hard as ever, constant as ever. And in its rigidity, its refusal to give an inch, it offers you something you never thought you'd find out here. Belonging. It's mid-afternoon now, and the steppe glows like an endless sea of bronze. You ride with the sun at your back, casting long shadows that trail you like old ghosts. The wind is brisk, curling through your hair, drying the sweat from your temples, whispering in a voice that sounds suspiciously like your mother's, telling you to sit straighter, ride quieter, trust less. The saddle beneath you creaks with every subtle shift, every jolt from a rock, every half-hearted kick to urge your horse forward. You stopped noticing the ache in your spine hours ago. It's part of you now, like your name, like your bow-hand calluses. A falcon circles overhead, a speck against the perfect blue. Your captain watches it, tracking its flight, nodding slowly. He says nothing, but you all know. Time to split. 2 riders east, 2 west. You and Batar ride north. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol troops often fanned out in radial formations during long-range patrols, covering vast terrain and relying on a sophisticated relay system of signal flags, flares, and falcons trained for messaging. Yes, trained falcons, because why send a runner when you can send a bird with attitude? You and Batar break off, riding without speaking. You've been together long enough to know that conversation is wasted breath. You share a rhythm, a pace, a quiet, interrupted only by saddle creaks and hoofbeats. The path you take narrows, hemmed in by low ridges and scrappy trees. Not the lush forest of fairy tales, more like defiant weeds that grew tall and bitter. You scan the terrain, then glance at Batar. He nods toward a rise up ahead. You both dismount. Horses can't climb that slope, and besides, you want silence. Real silence. You leave the saddles on, but unbuckled, ready to move fast if needed. Batar draws a short blade and begins the climb. You follow, fingers brushing the dry grass, the crumbling earth, the slow thud of your own heartbeat. At the top, you crouch low and peer over. Below you lies a caravan, small, maybe 5 wagons, 6 horses, some donkeys. No guards you can see. No banners, just travelers, merchants probably, or decoys. Fringe tidbit. The Mongol military often disguised small scout units as unarmed travelers, using them to bait enemy troops into exposing hidden camps or revealing their numbers. Some of the best spies posed as harmless peddlers for years before striking. You don't trust it, neither does Batar. He whispers, "They've stopped. That's not rest. That's waiting." You nod. You count the wagons again, the shadows between them, the movement that doesn't quite match what's visible. There are more people down there than the dust suggests. You don't engage. That's not your job. You slip back down the hill, legs bent, saddle ache returning now that your adrenaline's kicked it aside for a moment. You mount again. Batar follows. Back to the rendezvous point. No one says we were almost ambushed. You just report your findings. A nod here, a squint there. Then the formation adjusts again. You ride a new path now, circling wide. Historians still argue whether the Mongols succeeded due to overwhelming force or overwhelming fear. Was it their numbers, their speed, or their ability to appear anywhere, anytime, without warning? Like smoke that could stab. The sun lowers. You drink water from a cracked skin, the taste slightly sour, and think of sweeter things. Apricots, maybe. Bread that wasn't stale. A pillow not made of leather. You remember that story, the one an old scout told around a rare fire, about a prince who tried to invent a padded saddle, who thought maybe soldiers would ride better if they weren't bruised all the time, and how his men nearly mutinied, calling it softness, weakness, a step toward ruin. You didn't believe it then, but now? You shift again. The edge of your saddle digs into your thigh, right where it always does. That same mark it leaves, over and over, like a signature. You see now why comfort feels like betrayal. Because when your world is shaped by hardship, the smallest ease feels like letting your guard down, like losing the edge, like inviting danger through the back door. You ride until dusk bleeds into the edges of the world. Then, finally, you stop. No fire, no tents, just you, your horse, your saddle, and the sky. You take your saddle off slowly, as if undressing a wound. You brush off the underside, feeling the grain of the hide, the faint dampness from sweat, the trace of dust that never quite leaves. You place it beside you, not to use as a pillow, not tonight, but still within arm's reach. You eat dried meat, chewing slowly, teeth aching. You don't speak. No one does. The quiet settles like a blanket. The horses lie down one by one. The sky shifts into deeper hues. And for a moment, you let your eyes close. Just for a moment. Because out here, dreams are dangerous. You tie the leather cord to your wrist again, just in case. Then you lie back, spine flat against the earth, and feel the night lean over you like a question. How long will you last? And the saddle answers, as long as you keep riding. The night deepens, wrapping you in its cold, star-studded cloak. You lie there beneath the vastness, your body aching, muscles stiff, your mind flickering between half-wakefulness and that fragile space where dreams begin to stir. The saddle lies beside you, a silent sentinel guarding your rest, or maybe your unrest. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, feeling the rough wool scratch gently, a small comfort against the chill. The horses snuffle softly nearby, their breathing slow and steady, a rhythm as old as the steppe itself. You stare up at the heavens, tracing constellations you learned as a child, the Great Bear, the dragon, the spear. Each a story told in stars, stories of heroes and monsters, gods and men tangled in eternal dance. You wonder if the riders who came before you once did the same, wondering if the sky watched over them with mercy or indifference. Mainstream fact: Mongol soldiers slept very little, often just a few hours, keeping one eye always open. Their survival depended on perpetual vigilance, especially on foreign lands where enemies lurked like shadows. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down, a collective memory of hardship, bravery, fear, and faith. It's no surprise that comfort was seen as betrayal, because dreams, those moments when your mind wanders beyond the saddle, could unravel the sharp edge needed to survive. Fringe tidbit: Some scholars suggest that Mongol warriors used ritualistic practices, such as tying knots in leather cords or whispering protective charms, to guard against nightmares that could weaken their spirit or even cause physical harm while they slept. You touch the leather cord tied around your wrist, a simple thing, worn smooth by time and worry. You whisper a quiet word, something between a prayer and a warning, hoping it's enough to keep the darkness at bay. Historians still debate whether this intense vigilance was born from strategic necessity or deep spiritual belief. But either way, the boundary between sleep and wakefulness was razor thin, and crossing it recklessly meant risking everything. The cold seeps into your bones, but you don't move. You let the night's silence envelop you, each breath slower now, each heartbeat steady and sure. You imagine the dawn breaking over the endless plains, painting the world in soft saffron and indigo, promising a new day to ride, fight, survive. For now, though, you rest. Not because comfort has claimed you, but because even the fiercest rider must pause. The saddle waits beside you, a reminder of all you carry, the weight of history, the burden of survival, and the quiet hope that tomorrow will find you still riding. And with that hope, you drift deeper into sleep. Sweet dreams.